It's Friday, November 29th, 2013. This is the Hermetic Hour. I'm your host, Poke Runyon, and tonight we present a discussion on the 24th path on the Hermetic Kabbalah's Tree of Life. And this is the path attributed to death, the right-hand guardian or gateway to Tippereth, with the devil on the left side as path 26. Now, these two gates are considered soul-testing challenges to the central sun and the realm of the solar logos, represented by Tippereth. Our texts will be Gareth Knight's Practical Guide to Kabbalistic Symbolism and John Michael Greer's Paths of Wisdom. This path will give us an opportunity to discuss the nature and meaning of Hermetic enlightenment, the concept of individual consciousness, being eternal consciousness, and what Eliphas Levi really meant when he wrote, "Death is man's way of conquering immortality." So, if you want to live forever, tune in and we'll get a head start on it. Now, first let's get ourselves on the map here. This 24th path leads from the sphere of Netzach, the sphere of nature, number 7 appropriately, and that is on the right side of the tree. That's the tree, that's the side of mercy, and as opposed to the side of severity over on the left. And it leads up to Tippereth, of course, the solar sphere, number 6, in the center of the tree. Now, the letter of the path, Hebrew letter, is Nun, which is the fish. The name of God attributed is El, or Al, that's Aleph Lamed. The astrological correspondence is Scorpio, the scorpion. The tarot correspondence is the 13th trump, Death. The esoteric title is the Child of the Great Transformers, Lord of the Gates of Death. And the mythological principle is meeting with the powers of death. The experiences of the path, images of death, burial and decay, travel through deep water or through blood, visions of the dead and of the future. I'm reading, by the way, from John Michael Greer's book on page 182 here. The entities on the path are skeletons and other death figures and cold-blooded animals. The magical image is an arch of a deep greenish-blue color bearing the letters Nun in brilliant white on its keystone. The door in the arch bears the image of the 13th trump, the Grim Reaper. Now, this path does not mean that you have to die to get to Tippereth. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of the path is for you to try to come to an understanding, in as much as we blind mortals are given to understand such things, to give you some kind of an understanding and make some sort of accommodation with death, which has often been said that the uninitiated fear death, and the initiated, although they don't welcome it, at least they realize that death is not the end. It is, in many ways, the beginning. We'll try to get that concept across tonight from a Hermetic perspective. And the other path over on the other side leads up from Hod, which is the sphere of the intellect, and the sphere of the rational creative and constructive mind of man, mercurial spirit pod, leading up to Tippereth from the other side that we've already done is the devil. And these two paths, angular paths leading up from either side, the devil and death. And then, of course, in the middle, there is temperance, the middle way, so to speak, leading to Tippereth in the center of the tree. Now, in order to understand what these paths are leading to, in order to understand the paths themselves, we have to have some understanding of what they're leading to. And that means we have to have some understanding of the tree of life itself. And that means that we're going to have to go back to the Sefer Yetzirah and old Gershom Shalom, who said, in all of his wisdom, that the Kabbalah is Pythagorean. And what that means in short, quick terms is that Pereth is the solar center of the known physical universe that we inhabit here, which in the days when this tree of life was created was centered in our own solar system. And even though our solar system at the time of the Kabbalah's creation was thought of as geocentric, we have to realize that Europeans all across the temperate zone, the great god of our known universe was represented by the sun. And now this was not the case with the original Hebrews, the Arabs, and some areas down in the tropics. This was not the case. In fact, the Middle Eastern peoples, in those very, very hot regions, the sun was really not their friend. So they were more oriented toward the moon and the planet Venus. And in the case of the Jews, to which we attribute the structure of the Kabbalah, they were originally venerating the planet Saturn. And that's why they have their holy day on Saturday. And they had a lunar calendar. The sun, and even ancient Canaan, which is the source of much of what's come down to us in the Bible, even they thought the sun was a relatively minor deity, and so being patriarchal, they made the sun a goddess instead of a god, called her the torch of the gods, as it were. So what we're seeing in Tippereth, even though this arrangement was developed by Jewish scholars, rabbis, in the early Middle Ages, does not go back too much further than about 300 A.D. Actually, that's the Sefer Yetzirah. That's when the structure of this, what we call the Tree of Life, was originally laid out. And so what we have here is, at the outset, we have a mixture of the Greek mythology and biblical mythology. Even in the rabbinical Kabbalah, we have that. This is more a creation of Alexandria, and they had a large Jewish community in Alexandria, by the way. This is more a creation of Alexandria, drawing upon the Assyrian Tree of Life design, more Alexandrian than it is coming from Jerusalem, shall we say. So what we have here in Tippereth is the sphere of the solar logos. And I don't mean that necessarily has to be Christian, because the sun, Christianity, of course, was not originally a solar cult. Christianity was originally Jewish, and we've discussed this before at length, that Paul had a mind originally to spread Christianity to the Gentiles, and James, the brother of Jesus, was running the church of Jerusalem, and wanted to keep Christianity very, very, very much kosher. And Paul, because he felt that keeping we exempted the Gentiles from circumcision and certain other Jewish requirements, we weren't going to be able to spread the gospel to the European world. And so Paul had this debate with James in Jerusalem, which was James's turf. And James won the debate, and I have a suspicion that Paul may have been responsible for turning James into the Sanhedrin, and James, of course, got thrown out of a three-story window and broke his back, and while he was lying there, they stoned him to death. And that was the end of Jewish Christianity, by the way. And so from then on out, Christianity was on its way to becoming a solar cult. But before that, we had the Mithriatic cult, which was very, very popular in Rome. Constantine, in fact, was a Mithrite. And we had the Saul Invictus cult. And we had, of course, Greco-Egyptian solarism. Serapis it had a solar aspect. And so Tiphereth is the sphere of the dying and resurrected God, whether it's Christ or Dionysus or Apollo or whoever you want to put there, a solar entity. And it is the sphere of transformation, the sphere of sacrifice, the sphere of enlightenment. And therefore we have us on this one side, we have the devil coming up from Hod, from Mercury, and that's very appropriate, because Mercury, Hod, is a sphere where, if you want to, it's the sphere of the mad scientist, and he doesn't care what he creates as long as it's ingenious and as long as it it creates a spectacular result. It could be good, it could be bad. It's usually bad, and so the devil is very appropriate coming up from Hod. And how does one overcome the devil? Well, we've already discussed that in our lecture on the 26th path. So now we have over in this, coming up from the sphere of nature, the sphere of the goddess, the sphere of universal fertility and germination, and the sphere of the flow and harmony of nature, the green ray, if you will. And we published the green ray, of course. And this path goes up from Netzach to Tiphereth, and it's appropriately death, because everything in nature dies and is then again reborn in some form. Now, obviously, to travel this path, we're not going to have to die, but we need to find an understanding of death. Now, let us mention from a practical point of view that this is partially a boat working. So consequently, we will mount the boat down in the temple of Malkuth. The boat will spread its wings. We'll fly on our way all the way up to Netzach. We'll land on the goddess's island in Netzach, and then from there we'll make our way on foot, by boat, whatever, along the path of death. And, of course, then we'll return. After we've gotten to Tiphereth and had the Tiphereth experience, we will return and once again mount our boat and which will spread its wings and fly us back to Malkuth. That's the way we're going to do it. But let's confront death, and death in terms of Tippereth. Now, one thing, John Michael Greer is, he's a friend of the OTA, but he's not a member, and yet he has here in his the end of his book here, on the end of the article on death, he has the image of death is harmonious, elegant. It comes from Tippereth, not from the kingdom of shells. To the magician, certainly, death is a known quantity, and the awareness of death's nearness, a useful tool. And from the standpoint of the magical Kabbalah tool, the cycle of death and rebirth can be seen as a model for the opening of the veil, a radical change beyond which lies a new life. Very interesting, because in our version of the Tree of Life, and the psychic center, or chakra, if you will, of Tippereth, we place the vegetation spirit and the ancient Phoenician green man, Baal, and who dies every year, by the way, and we place his brother, Mot, the god of death, the original Grim Reaper. And the two of them together, brothers, the two of them are in the pyramid of the sun. They're inside the pyramid together, Baal on the throne, and Mot standing right behind him. And this is very appropriate. And as you progress through the seasonal ceremony cycle in the lower grades, Mot appears as a villain. In fact, he was the inspiration for Skeletor. And if any of you people remember, I think some of you probably do, Mattel's line of action figures, and also a very, very nice fantasy movie called Masters of the Universe. And it was based on Canaanite mythology. And Skeletor was very, very, very well played by Frank Langella. Skeletor is the god of death. And both in Masters of the Universe and in our seasonal ceremonies, Mot, or Skeletor, is a very sinister character. Obviously, he's the god of death, you know. I am Mot, thy royal brother, prince of darkness, death, and gloom. Thou hast lived thy fruitful season. Now 'tis time to seek the tomb. Yeah, but when you get to Pereth, and even the path, you realize that Mot is really not that sinister a character. He's in a somber, gloomy sort of way. He's your friend and your guide. That's an enlightened perspective that we go into. So, at this point, let us try to understand what, in the Hermetic tradition and in Hermetic philosophy, let's try to get a handle on death. Well, the first thing we need to understand is that in Hermetic philosophy, we operate on astrological cycles. Now, remember that astrology is the bedrock of Hermetic science. So, we operate through astrological cycles, and we very, very much follow the doctrine of reincarnation. Now, I'm not going to tell you that reincarnation is absolutely the truth or anything like that. I'm perfectly willing to concede that you can have an ancestral line. You might even reincarnate in the past. Or you might You might manifest an ancestor in the future. I don't know. I have to admit to you that I'm not sure. But in the Hermetic philosophy, we don't have to be sure. What we do is we have our tradition and we have our ways of believing, and to us, belief is a tool. And we decide if this is a tool that we want to believe in, and we'll use belief as a tool. Now, let me give you an example of this from my personal experience. And I had a lady friend years ago, very bright, very, very talented, and still is bright and talented too, by the way. And she and I went to a lecture by my friend Pat Zaleski, and Pat was holding forth on, among other things, reincarnation. Well, this young woman was one of these very bright, completely cynical, atheistic, rational humanists, whatever you want to call it. And she became very uncomfortable listening to Pat talk about reincarnation. And when we left the lecture and went out to drive home, she snapped at me. She said, "Why do you people believe in reincarnation?" And I said, "Well, really, the universe is so vast, so absolutely amazingly vast. It goes on beyond our imagination, how many billions of stars and all of this. And it all seems to work together and hang together, and it's just amazing the way it functions. So based upon that, I assume that there is a wonderful, all-powerful, mysterious God force there somehow or other. And so I agree to believe that. I kind of think maybe that's the way it is. And I kind of feel like maybe I can get in touch with it. Really good feeling. And so I get in touch with it, and I've got this consciousness, and if I ask this great God force that I'm in touch with and tuned up with, if I'd like to, when I pass on, I'd like to keep going and keep working and keep doing things and keep on. And I figure that if I ask him or her or it or whatever, if I ask for it, maybe I'll get it, because God is capable. Obviously, he's capable of giving it to me. I mean, look at what he's done with the universe. I mean, it's absolutely huge. It goes on forever, and it all works. And so he's perfectly capable of giving me another life if I ask him. But if I don't ask him, then maybe he won't. Maybe he figures, well, you don't want it, so I'll give it to him. So it can't hurt to ask, can it? Well, the result of that was she got mad at me. And she said, you're too clever. You're just too clever. Oh, gosh. Well, maybe I was too clever. But that's the way I feel. I feel that reincarnation is, I think, the natural way of things, because consciousness, I believe, goes on. And we certainly have these cycles that we go through. And so we believe in reincarnation because it gives us a purpose beyond just this lifetime. It gives us a long track. It gives us a form of immortality. And why shouldn't we ask for that? Because, like I said, if we don't ask for it, maybe we won't get it. Well, if you don't want it, don't ask for it. I personally want it. Now, I think the Buddhists do too. They say they don't, but they say that what they really want to do is get off the wheel, but they keep taking these bodhisattva vows and so I think they want it too. Anyway, this idea of consciousness going on, that needs to be explained. And it needs to be explained. You may not accept this without a lot of work, but if you do work at it, and if you do keep working at it, eventually you'll be able to grok this concept. Now, what I mean by grokking, in case maybe that term dates me, that's a hippie term. I think it comes from Stranger in a Strange Land. When you grok something, you intuitively stand it and make it yours. It's not just something you intellectually understand. It's not just something you intellectually accept. When you grok something, your consciousness encompasses it and you make it yours. So, one of the major objects of doing all this work on the Tree of Life and climbing the Tree of Life and doing all our Hermetic work, and memorizing all of our correspondences and working our magical rituals and all of this, one of the main object of this is to where we will grok this extended, never-dying consciousness idea. And here's how it works. You are the only person who knows that he or she has consciousness. Most of us live somewhere behind our third eye, and somewhere inside our head. And some of us live down the chest, and, I'm not going to mention that. But anyway, most of us live somewhere in the head, in the middle of our own head, mind, and whatever. And that consciousness is nowhere else. No one else is. You don't know that anyone else has it. You are looking at the world through your eyes, and you're feeling the world and with your hands, and you're experiencing the world, and you're the only one who is. All of these other people, including your mother and your father and your brothers and everything else, they are all outside of you. You don't really know that they have a conscience. You assume they do, and you assume they have the same consciousness experience that you do. But you are the only one you know. This is a concept that an only child can grasp easier than someone who grows up with a bunch of squabbling siblings. So only children have an advantage in this respect. But even so, even a person with a lot of brothers and sisters and all, if they could find the privacy and the tranquility to meditate on this, they can discover it. Now, the first person that we know of who really, really developed this awareness and concept was an ancient Greek philosopher by the name of Hermetic. And curiously enough, he was a mystic, and he was very much a mystic. And he became aware of this individual consciousness. And he said that the only things you knew were what you could perceive and nothing else, and you yourself were all you really were aware of. And you weren't even sure that what you were looking at and what you were doing, that was real. All you knew was that you were you. And from this, by the way, the entire structure of modern logic derives from this very strange, at least at the time, magical concept of individual consciousness being the only thing that you are sure of. Now, Parmenides developed this idea, and Empedocles and others, the pre-Socratian philosophers, those in the era of Pythagoras, they developed this. And this is the beginning, by the way, of what we call Hermetic science or Hermetic art, was this kind of philosophy. It owes something to the Orphic, and that's the idea of this spirit ascending into the stars, the celestial realms, what it does, and going up the Milky Way to the pole star and beyond. Yes, it owes something to that, but that owes something to Hermetic science also. But the primary thing of importance here is the individual consciousness. Here's the way this works, and this is what you will hopefully grok. And by your continual use and practice of the Hermetic arts and your development in the Hermetic system, you're working toward grokking this concept that your consciousness, you are the center of the universe. Wherever God is, and we are virtually certain, and we believe for the sake of believing, that every one of us is ensouled with an equal spark of divinity. Right? Now, if that spark of divinity is inside you, and right in the center of your consciousness, and you're the only one that's there, then you are literally at the center of the universe. Whole universe. Yeah, you're the center of it. Because you're the only one that's there with that little spark of divinity. And that spark of divinity, we assume, obviously, is in everybody. And the awareness of it isn't in everybody, but it's in everybody, and it can't be quantified or qualified. You can't say, well, I have more God than you do. I might have more awareness of God than you do. But how do you quantify or qualify God? You say, I've got a bigger spark of God than you have. No, you can't say that. But you can say, or you could at least, but don't say it too arrogantly. Try to be humble about it, because you got to realize that even though you're the center of the universe, you're God, and you're the eyes of God, the ears of God, the hands of God, and even so, that's all true. But God in totality is so much vaster than you, and so much more powerful than you. And there are simulacrums of you, or reflections of you out there, human and more than human, that are vastly more intelligent and more capable and even more spiritually developed than you are, and you better realize that. Don't fall, please, if you accept this concept, do not fall into the error of the Weishaupt's Illuminati and come up with this idea that there is no God but man, which, by the way, Crowley grabbed a hold of. And Crowley's problem was really, Crowley was so intelligent. I mean, here was a man who could four good chess players at the same time and beat all of them simultaneously. So Crowley never could find anybody that he thought was smarter than he was, and so consequently he could think that maybe he could. I mean, I'll forgive him for that, because, I mean, he really was. He was ferociously intelligent. Fortunately for me, I couldn't even beat one good chess player. So I know there are much smarter and much more intelligent people out there than I am. So it's easier for me to be humble, and it's easier for me to realize that this vast intelligence, this vast God form, this mighty force in the universe is something that I am totally in awe of. And someone once said that fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Well, that is certainly ought to be true. If it's not true, it ought to be. So, but the important thing here is, for all of this humility that we know we must have in the face of the vastness of the universe and the phenomenal genius of humankind and all the rest of this, what we must remember is that we still, you yourself, me, you, and everybody who knows this, is aware of it, is at the center of the universe. And everybody who is aware of this and is aware of their consciousness, their own consciousness, is immortal, because consciousness doesn't die. Consciousness goes on. And one of the things that you will learn to do in the process, and in order to prove this to yourself, in the process of the Hermetic work, is to take your consciousness and take it outside the body. And once you do that, you proved yourself. Consciousness doesn't die, it goes on. And that's what we mean by immortality. This is, by the way, I said I would, we would talk about Eliphas Levi's statement, death is man's way of conquering immortality. Well, when you first read that, it sounds like a cute little repartee, you know. Oh, yeah, death is man's way of conquering immortality. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a quip. No, it's not a quip. Because if you look deeply into this little statement, you realize that Levy was aware of the great secret. Death is man's way of conquering immortality. Because when you conquer something, you make it yours. So, we're going to follow the path of death. We're going to understand death, or try to understand death. Or we're going to come to our understanding of death, which we're going to accept. Whether or not that's actually what death is, it doesn't matter that much, providing we come to an elegant Hermetic understanding of it. And this takes a little bit of explaining. An old rabbi once said that God is ineffable and everything else is man's cleverness. Well, that's true. Because once you achieve this enlightenment that we're discussing here, this complete awareness, you have grokked that you're the center of the universe. You've grokked that your consciousness is eternal. You've grokked all of this. You've made it yours. At that point, you realize that everything else you thought you knew, you don't know. You realize that everything else you thought you discovered, you thought you knew, you don't know. They're just operative concepts, that's all. You don't be sure of them. Yeah, you don't know that you're going to reincarnate. You know your consciousness is going to go on, but you don't know you're going to reincarnate. You don't know you're going to somehow or other have some reward for what you've done or anything like that. You don't know anything. All you know is you're immortal. You know that. You know your consciousness is going to go on. And it's just like, this is represented by the idea of, and I think we discussed this before, where they used to place the fool down at the bottom of the tree. Tarot card, the fool. And then the Golden Dawn, in some inspiration, they moved it up to the top of the tree. Well, now, if we have the fool down at the bottom of the tree, and we also have the fool up at the top of the tree, well, down at the bottom of the tree, we have the arch fool. And at the top of the tree, we have the pure fool. The pure fool doesn't know anything, but he's enlightened. He's up there. He's right on his way to Kether. He's the pure fool. That's the meaning of the fool being way up there. And that's what I mean, is when you finally get this, what we call enlightenment, you really realize you don't know anything. You don't know anything except that you're immortal. And that's really a nice thing to know. So, if we know that we're immortal and we're going to go on, then the next question is, where are we going to go? And is there anything we can do to influence where we might go and what we might do? And, can we be what the Orientals refer to, the Tibetans refer to as Tulku. The Mongolians refer to that as a Tulku as a Hutuktu. And there's a Mongolian joke about that, but I don't think I'm going to go into it right now. But anyway, the Tulku, or the Hutuktu, is one who decides where he's going to go and what he's going to do in the next incarnation. And so, how do we here in the West accomplish the same thing? Well, there's an answer to that, too. In the East, and the Tibetans especially, and the Mongolians have a system, very, very ancient system, called Kala Chakra. It's the wheel of time, and chakra being wheel and Kala being time. And this initiation, which I fortunately received a 9-day program from the Dalai Lama, but at the time, I frankly admit I didn't really understand it. I had to go over it and over it and over it before I got some understanding of it. But the Dalai Lama goes about, and not just the Dalai Lama, but Sakya Trizin and several other lamas, they go out, they give this the basic initiation. There's more to it than just the basic, but they give the basic initiation to anybody literally who petitions for it, who wants it. Why do they do this? Well, our friend Andrei Zavinsky, who wrote Red Shambhala, he said, well, they do this because it's political. And I didn't quite understand that at first, but then I got to looking at it again, and I thought Andrei is correct. And the reason for that is this, that the main thing in the end of the Kala Chakra initiation, you have a ritual and take a bodhisattva vow that you will come back, that you when you pass on, you will be reborn in Shambhala, and you will help the army, and you will be a member of the army of the faith. Now, Shambhala, a unique idea of Shambhala is that it's the Buddhist apocalypse. You didn't think they had an apocalypse, did you? Well, they do, and the Shambhala. The faithful warriors of Shambhala will rise up from the underground kingdom when the faith is in danger, and they will sweep the world in the name of the faith, and we'll have a new age. Yeah, it's an apocalypse. And if you take a Kala Chakra initiation, you have pledged yourself to join that army. Now, that's part of the secret of being Toku or being Hutuktu or whatever. That's part of it. And let's say this. Let's say that if you really want to master death, at least according to our tradition and how we look at it, hey, well, we don't know anything. I mean, do we really know anything? We don't. We just have these techniques that we choose to believe because they're elegant and they're traditional, and we might as well believe them because if we want to, it's better than not believing them and not getting them. So remember, go back to my conversation with the young lady who said, why do you people believe it? Well, we do because we like it. We like it. That's why we do. And we're hedging our bet, and we're setting ourselves up. So here is what we do. The whole secret, and by the way, there's a certain group or organization that would like to, I don't want to name them. I don't even want to give you a hint as to who they might be. But they offer something like this, and they require what their version of Bodhisattva vows, and they call this a sort of, I won't even use the term they use, let's say they call it a method. But actually, we can give it to you, the secret of it, very, very quickly. If you want to know where you're going, then you have to know where you've been. And if you know where you've been, then you have a pretty good idea where you're going, and then you have to want to go there. And that's about what it amounts to. So, going back to the idea that astrology is the bedrock of Hermetic science, we want to know, from looking at the horoscope, we're going to do horoscopes of our past lives. Yeah, we're going to want to know where we've been, and that'll tell us, in a sense, where we're going. And we'll know more about ourselves. And then our past lives will be easier to recall. And then we get a good idea of what our purpose is. And somebody once said that the whole purpose of life is to find out the purpose of life, and that gets right down to the idea of the one true will. What is your one true will? Find your true will and do it. Or as Curly the Trail Boss said, find that one thing, boy. Find that one thing and do it. So that one thing is quite a spiritual aspect too. It's not what your parents want you to do, and it's not what society wants you to do. It's what you are here to do. And your 3 guardian angels are help in that regard. You know, you have one guardian angel that's on your ascended, and then you have one guardian angel that's the planetary ruler of your ascendant, and then you have your holy guardian angel who is been with you all through these incarnations and is independent of the particular astrological aspects of your present incarnation. And so get all of this together, and then you can say that you have mastered death. Because death comes to everybody. As I said, Mot, the Grim Reaper, he's sad, but not particularly grim. He's going to come to all of us, and what we need to do is to take that opportunity to go ahead and with new vigor pursue the course that we know we are on. And that requires, of course, some sort of a buoys out the bow, but you'll get to that when you get to it. And now, there's one other thing that I want to mention, and that, of course, is the nature of Mot himself, that he is your guide. He's your guide. And you're not going to fear him, because he won't come to you until he's supposed to. Now, this ought to give you a good idea of how we would proceed getting through the path of death to reach Tiphereth, and we've already discussed the symbolism of Tiphereth. Now, next week we're going to try to have a very, very interesting guest, and I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be yet, because we're not sure. Are we? No, we're not. But we are going to see if we can bring on a very, very interesting guest next week. So be sure and tune in. And meanwhile, good magic.